What's going on, everybody? This is episode, man, 100.
112.
That's crazy. I don't know how we still made it here. um, I think it's so dope that we're able to say that we've been not so much like we've been doing this for 112 episodes. That's big because that shows a lot about consistency. But as you know, guys, we're having another week. We always like to start off with positivity, testimony, and just like what's going on with you. All right. So this is Boss Up Talks, guys. Guys, like and share this feed. So Natalie, what's been going on this week with you? Like, what's your praise report, your testimony service? What's all of that? What's all of that?
I am celebrating just being on, collaborating with a couple of people in the industry. I have an event coming up with Adam Flores. He is a 6 7 figure. Lord, I was gonna say 6 7 million. Oh, speak that over him. Business owner, and he helps other business owners. So this month I'm partnering with him on his 1 day event, and it's gonna be exciting. It's gonna be fun. It's just helping business owners scale their business to 6 figures, and so I'm excited about that. I actually have a couple of other podcasts that I'm going to be guest appearing on, so y'all look out for that as well. And I'm just like in this mode. My husband was asking me yesterday, like, what's the goal for this season? And it seems like it's exposure, and it's just like, yeah, it's exposure, because if you are really good at what you do but nobody knows it, then what good are you to the people? And I really want to help as many people as possible take their vision out of their mind and actually implement and have a business that works for them. So that's my wins for the week. What about you, Chef Jay?
That's good. I love that part. One, I'm so happy for I saw the fire. I was like, oh, fire emoji, because we're just genuinely celebrators of each other, you know. And I think that's what I love the most about our friendship. Is always like it's never you can't do this. It's always like, oh, that's lit. How you gonna do this? What's up? You know. And you need to be in a circle like that. For me, um, my focus of the week is really kind of honing in on um more so pausing and reflect on the anointing God has on my life. I think so oftentimes we just naturally just keep doing stuff and doing stuff and not realizing that it's a privilege that God has blessed you to do this thing. um I'm just taking time to really pause and reflect on just like the spaces that I'm in or I've been in, and just really stopping and say, God, like, really, thank you. Like, you really, you did your big one, you know? So I think for me, it's just like a season in like where I'm just reflecting on just like, what God is doing, how he's so amazing to me. And I think the more you just focus on what God is doing and the opportunity to get to do something versus, oh, I got to do this, your mindset just shifts to a positivity situation. And it's all go. I do have another one too. I teach autistic adults twice a week, and sometimes I get really nervous about sometimes them cutting. This is any kid, like what adult. But one of my student who like he has a problem with his hand, and he was able to hold the knife by himself and cut. I had to guide a little bit, but I was happy for him because I'm like, wow, this is cool because this is like our 6th cooking class and he's getting it, So it's nothing like a teacher when you see a student who is struggling with something, now they're starting to get it. And it kind of leads into our next our topic for the day, which is just keep swimming. All right, guys. So guys, once again, guys, just like and share this feed. It's a good topic today, talking about just keep swimming. But I want to go back to what whole Boss Up is. Boss Up stands for building opportunities strategically and successfully, right? So as a boss, you're building opportunities with strategy that's going to lead to success, and it's going to help you boss up. So that's why we even started doing this whole situation. But I want to go to our topic talking about just keep swimming, pushing forward when life tries to drown you. What I've realized is in life, sometimes we go through certain experiences and encounters, and it's like you don't know how you're going to get out of it. All it seems like is chaos, is confusion, is a lack of clarity. But just know that sometimes in order to get through things, you have to just keep swimming, like that Finding Nemo situation, that you want to keep going and keep going and keep going, because through perseverance, you'll get where you go. But I think sometimes too is we have moments where we kind of not really look towards God, where we look to our failing resources. And it's like, man, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. But one thing I've learned is the scripture that talks about trust in the Lord with all thy heart. And then in Galatians it says, like, let us not grow weary in well doing, for in the proper time we will reap a harvest if we don't give up. And I think what I'm in the place of now is never if it's gonna happen, it's more so when it happened. And in the meantime, until that door opens up, I'm gonna be standing in the hallway, learning all I gotta learn, taking time to study and practicing, because I gotta realize that you have to just keep swimming, you gotta just keep going, because some things I don't see a way out of some situations myself, but then when it happens, I'm like, man, God, that's why you had me do that. So you have to keep on going with perseverance, and don't allow those moments to feel like you're drowning to take over. Oh, tag you with.
I was like, wait, what happened? I thought something happened. I'm like, he done?
I was done. I was tagging you in.
But no, I'm like, I'm all into it. Like, yes, keep going. But which ties into what I'm about to say next. But I love the fact that it's just keep swimming, because I was like, I told Chef Jay this today when I came on and I saw the topic. I'm like, wait a minute, was you in my mind this week? Because I just had this urge this weekend on Saturday to watch Finding Nemo. I was like, I just had this urge to watch Finding Nemo, and I have 5 kids from ages 18 all the way down to 11, and nobody didn't want to watch it with me on Saturday, and I just got into bed and watched it by myself with my little popcorn and everything. And of course, that is one of those iconic scenes where, you know, Dory drops the whatever, the mask, and they have to go look for the mask, and she goes, just keep swimming. And, you know, Marlin is like all upset and all this other stuff, and she's just singing and moving, right? And so that's the key to being successful in business, especially when you're moving through these times where it is difficult, and life does what life does, right? It brings you these difficult, challenging situations that you have to deal with, but the goal is to just keep moving, right? And I think people think moving, like you can't, you think in your mind, well, I can't just take a break. I can't just, you know, pause it. And you could definitely pause. But what I was looking at was the definition of pause is a temporary stop, where a stop is bring it to an end, completely bring something to an end. So what some people do is they either pause too long and the pause becomes a stop where they no longer moving forward, right? Or they just completely quit. And that's the one way that you can fail in business, is quitting, is not showing up, is saying, you know what, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. Even though you have a call to do it, just stopping, you're not going to see the end result that you desire to see if you don't keep moving. And you can pause and you can rest. I love resting, right? And resting now for me is more than just, oh, I'm taking a break, or I'm gonna stop, or I'm gonna lay down or take a nap, right? Resting is really, I'm going to take a moment in my day or in the season, right, that I'm in, and I'm going to reflect on the promises that God gave me. I'm going to reflect on the vision that I have. I'm going to pause and I'm going to go back to the beginning, because in the beginning, when you're starting your venture, when you're starting your business, when you're starting an entrepreneurship, you know you're excited. That adrenaline that comes over you when a new idea comes into your mind, you're super excited. And so to get that momentum back, I have to take a minute to pause and go back to the beginning, go back to that part in the history where I was super excited about really moving forward in business, and bringing that time frame into the middle process where everything seems very challenging, very difficult, and bring that feeling back so I can keep moving forward.
That's good. There's nothing wrong with pausing. Like when you're watching the show, you want to hear everything about it. And sometimes you have to pause and rewind to go over something to make sure you got that. Oh, is that what happened? Okay, let me rewind that, because sometimes when you don't take that time to go back, you miss some pivotal stuff, right? But not only that, one of my students, he's probably not there anymore on Instagram, Gordon. And yesterday in class, Gordon, we were making whipped cream. And what I love about the situation was, have you ever made homemade whipped cream? There's a lot of risk action, and you got to keep going and going and going and going. And sometimes you get tired. You got to switch arms. You got to do this. And so he was excited to make it, and he got a little tired. And it's actually my stories. If you see my Instagram stories, it should still be posted up. And what I love is I said, listen, you can't give up on this. You got to keep going. He took a little break. He got back to it, started whipping again. Because what happened is we know, here's the thing about keep swimming, right? You know the destination, but sometimes it's just like you may not know the whole process, or you know the process might be like tiring. Like I know this weekend, I already know all I have to make for this gig. It's a lot on a gig. And I'm like, listen, I know I got to get through this. Let me manage my expectations and work on the progress. So he actually got the whipped cream done, and it was so Gordon was so tired at the whipping up whipped cream. But what's so dope about it was it's like we know why we're working so hard, but we know that as you're working through things, there's certain components that are needed for the process of you working, right? So, for example, is we know when we're making whipped cream, it's going to take a lot of motion to whip it. Not only that, I need to whip it fast because the air has to come into the bowl to allow it to aerate and become stable. But if I just whip it slow, it won't have the same effect. It'll never reach that peak, right? But the same thing in life is there's a certain momentum you have to go to achieve. This is getting good now. There's a certain momentum you have to go to achieve certain things. Like if I love a GPS where they configure a time that you will be there by the conditions of what's going on in the weather, the traffic, as well as stop signs and the law. And they'll tell you, hey, cop approaching. Like, it tells you all these warnings, but it knows that it's going to get you to this GPS, this destination. But there's going to be certain different weathers, different different distance you have to go, and different speed limits. And that's the same thing when it comes to life. We all have our own destination goal or what we have to go to, but we have to be clear and recognize that, hey, I have to prepare myself. Like I remember growing up, when we would go down south, my mom always make chicken and chicken sandwiches, and because we would prepare because she knew that we would be hungry. So listen, we're gonna prepare this food, and if you was in the black family, if you're doing a road trip down south, you're gonna have some fried chicken and some bread because we had to prepare because we had to balance the funds, and we had to make sure we had enough substance to get where we're going. What happens is we get burnt out so easily sometimes because we have never prepared for the journey, right? Like even too, it's like when you go to the supermarket and you're hungry. That's the worst thing to do when you're hungry because you start picking up extra load and you start spending more resources because you're doing things while you're hungry or while you're in need of something. And what happens is you start doing so much stuff. Then it's like, wait, how I go to the store with 5 items and now I have 25 items, right? So you want to make sure that when you're going through life about just keep swimming and holding on, that you start counting the cost is what I'm really trying to say. Counting the cost of what the journey looks like, because when you count the cost, you're not only prepared, you're preparing for success, that I know I'm going to need this stuff, right? Like when I travel, like I have this fanny pack all the time because I have all the things I need to be successful if I'm going to be out for a few hours. And what happens is when we're doing certain things, we're not preparing for the journey or the cost because we have not taken account of what's needed to be successful in this season, in this mission, and on this pathway that we're trying to achieve.
Listen, that was, like you said, it's getting good. That was good. I heard you say prepare for the journey, not just the destination. And that's the problem. So many people, right? And I'm going to take that road trip analogy because that's the same kind of analogy that I use with my clients when I in my academy, as I am explaining and breaking down what entrepreneurship truly is. It is a journey. It is not just the destination. It's not just a 7-figure business. It's about who you're becoming along the way to get to that place. And a lot of people are preparing just for the end result. I'm just preparing to be the person that has a 7-figure business, or I'm just preparing for the 7-figure business. I'm just preparing to have 5,000 clients. I'm just preparing to have this right here. But you don't recognize the journey is what prepares you to become the thing that you need in the destination, right? And you don't think about when you say counting the cost again. you're bringing new light to this subject for me, because I've read that scripture over and over again. And you read about count the cost, like building a house, right? And you think about, okay, I need this amount of money for the lumber and this amount of money for the labor and this amount of money for this right there, right? That's what we think the cost only is. But the cost is not just monetary. The cost is not just financial. The cost is also your energy. The cost is also your friends. The cost is also your time. The cost is also other things associated with it. But we're so, again, when it comes to entrepreneurship, a lot of us get a rude awakening, right? You've been in it for a long time, Chef Jay, so you understand fully from a child. But for those of us that come from employee mindset to entrepreneurial mindset, it is a huge change. It's a huge shift. You have to become a completely different person. And sometimes you don't think about counting the cost to time and influence and reputation and all that other stuff. All you're thinking about is what you were thinking about before. It was, I'm exchanging my time in this 9 to 5 for money. And that's all you think about. What kind of money do I have to invest in this thing? But it's so much more than your money. It's so much more than just those finances. That's the low hanging fruit when it comes to entrepreneurship. You're investing deeper. You're investing in relationships. You're investing in coaching. You're investing in your development. Like, if your mindset is not in the right place, entrepreneurship will break you and you will be running back to a 9 to 5 and you will stay there instead of saying, you know what? There are moments in my journey that I will have to go back to a 9 to 5, but I'm going to look at it different. These are contracts. These are
Yeah,
things that
that's
I'm
good.
working through that I'm going to be able to utilize to bring back into my business. So I may need to go and work into somebody else's company. I may need to go partner with somebody as a 1099 employee or whatever, like a contractor, right? I may need to do that so I can gain finances, I can gain wisdom, I can gain experience, I can gain more authority in my position, and then I can come back, right? But you don't look at it like, oh, I'm giving up. No, you look at it as a pause, temporary, as opposed to a stop. I ain't gonna do this no more. But you have to start shifting your thinking. Instead of just preparing for the end destination. Oh, I'm gonna have all these clients, they're gonna pay me the big money. I don't have to, I'm gonna have freedom and all that stuff. Prepare for the journey, because freedom, oh, it's gonna cost.
That's
It's gonna cost you.
that's so good. So I'm quick to get a job. People don't realize that. Listen, as long as I've been in business, I know that I have not one problem going to get a job. And I think that's the point about it too. Like, when we're so hooked on getting things, like, this is my goal, this is my dream. Please, sometimes you gotta wake up from your dream and go work and then go back to your dream. But it's like you're working, it's nothing wrong with that. I think for so the time people are like, oh, they look down on that, but it's like, yo, listen, you gotta pay you gotta pay bills, right? You got to do things that make sense. And I think some people some people are so focused on, not feel like they're quitting or being a loser or something. Listen, go take your time. If you need to get a job as a business owner, go get a job and stop being so like silly about things. Because what happens is sometimes when you go to work, like, you never know what opportunity you might meet. The reason why I've been at 5 teaching jobs, right? Because one, I don't take nobody crap, but the other part about it is I've had an opportunity to meet thousands of students that I would have never got a chance to meet if I would have been in one place. I've gotten opportunities for gigs. If I would have never, moved around or took opportunities, I would have never met these people in different counties and different cities. So it just lets you know that, listen, when you're in the journey, you can't be worried about, like, what's it going to look like if I do this? So what? Get a job. Like, I think too, even too, when we collab on stuff, people think I can't do it by myself. Collab. Because guess what? Like, when you take opportunities, you start to realize you may learn, even if something doesn't work out, you learn something. It teaches you something. And I think just kind of going back to just thinking about with being just that whole just keep swimming mindset, you got to realize when you're actually struggling, right? There's sometimes that we'll keep working and things ain't working right, but we just like, oh, I'm gonna keep the faith. I'm gonna keep the faith. Nah, fool, you are in. There is a big alarm. And the thing about it is too, God will give you signs like, hey, I know this is the plan, but we might need to pivot for a second. Let's take a pause. Let's reflect because there's danger ahead the way you're going. So sometimes you got to rearrange what you have going on because God has something big for you. And I think too is life challenges can really feel overwhelming. I think that's the part that we're not always honest with entrepreneurship or life. Life can be hard. Life can be challenging. Life can be a struggle. It doesn't mean that my faith does not apply or I'm not manifesting every day. Sometimes it's challenging. Some days you don't want to get up. But what happens is when instead of like trying to ignore the signs, recognize them. Because what happens is when you recognize the thing, you can put a name to it, right? If I'm feeling depressed, I'm gonna recognize the fact that, hey, you know what? Today was not my day. I wasn't feeling good today. I was depressed. But guess what? The joy of the Lord is my strength. Today will still get better because I know that I have an expected end. But when you never take time to recognize it, you don't realize the signs that it's time to shift your mindset and your strategy. That's what Boss Up is all about. Building opportunities strategically and successfully. It's about building these opportunities of success and making sure that the strategy changes. Because you got to think, sometimes you got to play, chess. You're playing with different people and you got to do different moves. Because guess what? In this season, you can't play the same game this way because when you're going up, there's new levels. There's always going to be new devils. So you have to make sure that you're making time to pivot and learn. And I think one thing I've always realized is when you are in moments of that too, and you recognize what it is, like Psalm 69, verse 1-3 says, "Save me, O God, for the waters have come up to my neck." And when you're going through situations, and the reason why I love that scripture is because I think you have to be very transparent in business. You got to be transparent in life, period. Because if you're not transparent and say, listen, God, I need help right now. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it, but I know you have the answers. So instead of me racking my brain right here, let me just submit this and say, hey, I need help. Because guess what? God is always going to be with you. And I think too, when you start relying on your source, provision is always made. In certain situations when I know what to do, I'm just like, God, you know what? I don't know what to do, but I know you do. So fix it and let me get with it because I want to make sure when I just keep swimming, I'm making sure that he has provided everything I need to be successful. But when you're trying to do everything in your own might and your own strength, it's not saying you won't be successful, but the longevity when you rely on God to really be your source, things become easier. Not saying it won't be hard or you don't come in because it says be aware when you run into diverse temptations or trials. But guess what? God delivers you out of all. Is when you learn who to trust. I trust in God. When things don't go my way, guess it wasn't meant to happen that way. And there's sometimes that you will be stuck in a rut because like, oh, woe is me. It didn't happen this way. I feel like a failure. I feel like this. When God's like, nah, I just wanted you to pause and pivot because this wasn't working out. Like you did this in your own right, and you didn't even see that I already said this ain't the way to go. So when you are growing and learning to get to the next level, you have to acknowledge one, when you are stuck, when you're burnt out, when you're feeling lost. Hey, God, I don't know what's going on, bro. I just need some help. What should I do? Because when you submit and have that honest heart and that honest relationship, you get more downloads every day. Because when you have an open heart, it's easier to receive. But when you're so hardened and nobody can give you correction, nobody can tell you about yourself, or you're not realizing the signs, you realize all along God sent help your way, but you were so stubborn or so in your views to see that I tried to help you. It's like the story of the man who was drowning, and he said, God send me help. God said when he said it 3 times, and 3 people came, and then when the man drowned and went to heaven, the guy was like, God, what happened? Why, my boy, why you ain't saved me? He's like, I sent this person, I sent this person, I sent this person. You chose to ignore the signs I was willingly helping you out with. So you have to take a minute to pause and reflect and to realize when it's not working. And it comes from first being honest with yourself and saying, hey, this ain't working today. Maybe I need to pivot, and being open to that.
And I think that's, part of your emotional intelligence as well, is that self-awareness piece. And I love that you really dove into that and talked about that, because there's a lot of times that we don't pause long enough to become self-aware. We're just going through the motions and doing things as we would normally do, because the body itself loves to be on autopilot. That way it's expending less energy, and you're conserving more energy by being on autopilot, right? Think about it, like literally, as you're flying in the air, you're conserving more energy once the pilots put the airplane on autopilot mode. It is a way to conserve energy, to hold on, to utilize less fuel. In the same way, our bodies are that way. And so being able to recognize, like, yo, I'm in struggle mode, although it may not seem like, although I'm still doing the same things day in and day out, there's something that's off. There's something that's wrong. There's something that's not connecting the way that I was in the beginning, right? When I had more excitement, or when I had more momentum, and just taking that time to reflect and recognize. I love that you talked about recognizing your source, because one thing we have to understand as we become more self-aware is we literally don't know everything. We know less about the world itself than we recognize. And just simply put, somebody could flip you off on the highway, right? Or flip you off when you're driving, and you could just be like, this so and so, blah blah blah, they're running late for whatever, and you come up with this whole story in your mind about what's happening. Case in point, I had a client didn't come to, I usually have office hours, right? And one client in particular didn't come. And I was like, oh my God, why she didn't come? She don't like me no more. She comes to every single one. I was like, yo, she's not seeing the value in it anymore. And I'm going through my head. A couple of days later, she said, oh my gosh, I had a few, like we're having a conversation. She's like, I had to go to a funeral on Friday. Then I checked the time with the thing, and I was like, she didn't come because it's not like she didn't like me. It's because she had to go to a funeral. Somebody in her family died. Right? And so, if somebody in your family died, you're not thinking about like how you would normally think. You're grieving. You're in a whole nother space. And the main thing that you're doing is probably just, the things that you habitually do: wake up, brush your teeth, go to work, whatever the case may be. But anything extra you might not be doing. And to alert me and be like, hey, girl, I ain't coming, that's extra. And I had to recognize, like, yo, I don't know everything about everything. And my assumptions are not always accurate. And I have to go back to the source. I have to go back to God on things. I have to put my trust in things, in something that does not change. And everything changes except for God and change. Right? We're always going to have change. Things are always going to be different in our lives. Things are always going to be moving forward. Technology advances literally every single day. And so we have to recognize that we don't know everything about everything. But if we put our trust and our faith in the source instead of everything else, then we'll find comfort in, even though I don't know everything, God does. Yeah. And when he needs to alert me of certain things, he will. And if I need to go to him and ask him, I will. Like, your faith has to be grounded in something bigger than you. It has to be grounded in something bigger than you. That's why many people, when they're creating their businesses, they create a vision. They create a vision statement. They create a mission statement that's bigger than who they are. They create something to guide them along the journey, so that they're not stuck in their own perspective, in their own mind, in their own, situation in the present, because things will happen. Things will come out of the blue and make you want to be like, you know what? I'm done. I ain't swimming no more. F Dory, forget Marlin. I'm just going to sit here. All these people, you get to a place where nobody's buying, but like, they don't really understand the value that I provide. You know how many people I help? I ain't doing nothing for nobody no more. Like, you'll get in that mindset, because guess what? One day the people are going to be like, the thing that you have is the best thing. And then the next day they'll be like, nah, I'm good. And then they'll come back 2 months later and be like, you know what? I want it again. And then they'll be like, nah, I'm good. So you have to be able to navigate through all of that, because if you allow people to become your source, your emotions are going to be all over the place all the time. Because again, people change their mind. They changed their mind about the Son of God who came to die for their sins. One day they were like, Hosanna, Hosanna. The very next week they said, crucify him. We want Barabbas. We want that stinky one on the inside over there that was cutting up and killing folks. Give us him. We don't want the healer. We don't want the deliverer. We don't want the one that fed us. No, no, no. We don't want that one. That's how people are. They will change their mind. So
that's really good, especially like being an entrepreneur where our businesses are people based. If I ain't got no people, I ain't got no money, right? So, what I've learned to do, like when Jesus talking to Peter about stretch out your nets, I think what happens is too when you are just working on business stuff like that, you have to be aware that you can't always just rely on one thing, put your eggs all in one basket, especially because eggs too expensive nowadays to even put in. I cannot put all this in one basket because they are too expensive, but that's how it should be. Your time is so valuable, and that you have to realize that, hey, maybe I need to adjust this and not just rely on one thing. And one thing I was talking that what you got from what you're talking about was adjusting your stroke, pivoting when necessary when you are just keep swimming, because what happens is you can't approach things all the same way. There are sometimes you literally have to really sit down and say, God, listen, I need some strategy. I love movies that are about like wartime generals, and you see how they're pivoting different strategies in different ways. And even too, like if you think about Black History Month and you think about Harriet Tubman with the Underground Railroad, that she literally went so many times to bring people there where she couldn't always take the same route. Because what happens is sometimes when you're taking a certain way, your enemies start to monitor it's like with the phone, how they monitor what you're doing. I'm talking about Red Bull, and Red Bull start popping up all over my screen. your habits start catching up with you sometimes, or sometimes you have to really switch the game up, because there's sometimes that might not work this time, and you got to be so flexible. I think too, I've just learned to roll with the punches, because there are going to be things where, especially in catering and food service and dealing with people, they change all the time. Like an event I've done has never always gone exactly as planned, because there are obstacles that happen. Like I've had events where this happened or that happened, or I couldn't get that one product, had to, switch it up. But my thing is too, the end goal is for me to be successful. So I have to pivot that. And one thing that comes to mind to that is Romans 8, verse 28. All things work together for the good of those who love God. So even on my worst day, it's still going to work out. And once you kind of keep it in the forefront, it doesn't mean you don't show up and rise to the occasion. I'm still going to do my best, because I know that, guess what? That no matter how this turns out, it's always going to work out. No matter what the trial is going to be, whatever the annoyance is, I'm just learning I just know the trust, like, oh, let me trust in God. Let me just trust him, because I know it's going to work out for me. And I think once you start operating that mindset of I'm already a victor, and now I'm not looking for the victory, I already have the victory, you start moving differently. I don't go to a place where I want my business successful. It's already successful, right? I'm just learning the tools and how to really make sure to manifest that into this realm. And I think once you start getting to a place where you operate in the energy of I am successful versus trying to be successful, I am wealthy versus I'm trying to get wealthy. And I think too, it's a rat race when you're trying to get to where you already are. Like I already know that I'm valuable because God already said I'm valuable. So I don't have to keep looking for my value, because I'm already valued. So there's certain things that you start to see differently, because you got to know that, hey, and the first thing too, you got to assess what's working and what's not. Be honest where you need to pivot at. There's certain things that we will keep doing every single day, and we're realizing why we're not achieving the goal, because guess what? We might need to pivot. You got to be willing to take these risks, because guess what? Closed mouths don't get fed. And you wonder why you're not getting success in this area, because you're not even trying to take the risk to even try it. What if that one thing requires you just do this one small thing to change, and everything will be successful, right? You look at different businesses, like even to like the McDonald's brothers, they perfected that quick service fast food restaurant layout. Have you ever seen like the founder? They perfected that to a T, that people like Burger King and Taco Bell were all coming to them, because they became the leader at doing what they do, right? So there's gonna be times where it may seem like it's not working, but guess what? Because you decided to pivot, you create the new formula for success, right? There's that one thing that even too, like E40, that spray, they had to try 40 times to get it right. And unfortunately, they got it right. Like it takes time to perfect it. You don't always just get it. And it's guess what? I like making mistakes because guess what that means? I'm gonna get it right the next time because now I know exactly the formula. There are certain things where you have to go through trial and error. It's not gonna be perfect, but I love it because now I know exactly what not to do. Last week one of my students, Kevin, he put regular soap in the dishwasher, and I'm like, bro. So all he saw was and, and I always get on because he used to be squirting product around, right? And so all this soap started coming out the dishwasher. I'm like, Kevin, did you put soap in there? He was like, yeah, I did. I said, how much did you put in there? I just did one squirt. I said, you did not just do one squirt of detergent in there. I don't know how much you squeezed it, but now he knows, okay, I can't do that because guess what? I've done it to a dishwasher before too. So I know what the problem was. I know exactly what the problem was. So when you go through certain problems and you overcome, it allows you, one, to help other people, but two, it allows you to pivot. Like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to do this. Let me try it this way. And you got to be creative. And I honestly, sometimes the reasons why I've come with some good stuff and good food stuff or ideas or programs is because I failed at it. I remember the biggest event I did, like 19. Like I said before, I spent like almost like $8,000 with no real job trying to pay it, and then it was a fail. Like I think I probably had maybe like 5 people show. No, it was 20 of us showed up, and half of them was like the employees. But it taught me the value of learning how to promote. And that's why I'm so into content now, because I know that content is how I'm going to make my money. So when you don't take time to be like, hey, let me pivot this, let me change this, let me edit this, you're never going to get to a place where you're comfortable with what it is. So it's okay to take risks. It's okay to not be perfect and admit it. Because guess what? People like to work with people who are coachable. When you're not coachable and you got to answer for everything, and then the answer you got is wrong. Like when you're in that place, it's very hard for God to send people who are here to help you because you're so focused on this one thing. When it's just like, man, it's so much more for you to really get out.
So good. There's so much more for you to really get out. And I love that you talked about a little bit earlier on, just understanding, not just saying I'm going to have a successful business, but I am a successful business owner, and shifting your identity to become the person that you need to be, right? And operating from your future self. And this is one of the things I teach my clients as well, how to like shift into becoming their future self. But you have to also give yourself grace, because although you're making decisions from the future self who's already figured those things out, your future self is also human. And humans, no matter how long you live, you're going to make a mistake. Even you get to 120 years old like Moses, you're going to make a mistake. And so just giving yourself enough grace to know that I'm going to make a mistake, but from every mistake, I love that you said that. From every mistake, I learn not what not to do as well as what to do. And it's so funny because I have also put that squeeze in the dishwasher. I was like, what's all these bubbles? Why is this thing coming out? Oh my God. So when you said that, I'm laughing, thinking about myself making that mistake, right? And then the thing about it is you have a tendency sometimes, when this is why it's so important to remember that God is your source, because sometimes we'll have the tendency of, yes, I've made that mistake and I've learned from that mistake. Now I am sitting in a position to judge others who make that mistake. And it's not that you're supposed to be judging other people, because if you start doing that, you're going to open up yourself for a lot of judgment, right? You're going to open up yourself for a lot of negative critique instead of people actually coming to help and correct you. You want to always operate from a place of humility whenever you are, sharing your perspective or sharing wisdom with other people, because you don't want it to be like, oh yeah, she was out here talking, look at her now making all these mistakes and all the other stuff. And so operating from that place of grace and also giving people grace as well, this is going to really add to your credibility as well as help you, because one thing you mentioned, Chef Jay, is that community around you, right? People don't realize how important community is to help you keep the momentum. A lot of people get stagnant because they're isolating themselves. And I wanted to say isolated, but it's not because they're isolated, because they're isolating themselves. There are so many communities out here. Like, even though I'm in a place where I don't physically have a lot of friends, I have a lot of friends because of the connection with technology. I,
Yeah, that's
I
good.
feel like I've made so many more friends that none of us live in the same state or the same city or the same country. You know what I mean? And it's just like, this is mind blowing, but it's because of technology. So even though I may be physically isolated, I am not relationally isolated because of the connection through technology. And so that's why I say some people are isolating themselves. Some people are putting themselves in a place of isolation, and
Mhm.
that's causing you to become stagnant, because once you are by yourself, one, the enemy talks super loud and consistently, and two, our minds, right? Again, we don't know everything about everything. So, in order to fill in the blanks, we create stories in our minds. And sometimes those stories can be the thing that defeats you and not actual reality.
That's good. Because there's certain things that people are going through right now that all started with a small, simple thought in the mind. You can't do this. You can't make it. You just gonna be just like this person. And then next year starts to magnify. And you start seeing that I don't know if you ever saw it's a thing called Interview with a Vampire. And the series it shows how the vampire first started just speaking softly to the person to the point where it became uncontrollable because it was first started with that small thought of realizing, acknowledging what seems to be. Remember, faith is acknowledging what's not there to bring it forward, but fear is the same thing. Fear is acknowledging what's not actually there and bringing it to pass. You know, what I feared have come upon me the most, right? So when you start thinking about that, you start to realize that, man, um, I can't do this. And it's those little small conversations that really tear you down. But the thing about it is the whole goal about just keep swimming, eventually you will reach the shore. The shore. The reward of persistence is actually achieving the goal. So the reason why I gotta just keep swimming is because I know there's a blessing in being steadfast. Every struggle that you endure builds a strength that you need for the next level. So now, when I go to the next level, I have the tools because I'm like, okay, I already did it before, so I know what to do this time. So let me just intensify it. And you got to think about it. God rewards those who remain faithful and continue to press forward. Um, and even too, breakthrough comes for those who refuse to stop swimming. James 1 verse 12 says, blessed is the one who perseveres under trials, right? And what happens is too is like even Hebrews 10 verse 36 says you need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what He has promised. There's so many promises that we don't receive, but because we don't hold up eye in the bargain. And like now as a parent, so I know sometimes parenting is full of bargaining with children. You know, like even in teaching, listen, class, if you do this, I will give you this. Because people respond to rewards. But what happens but there, in order to get the reward, there are certain things you have to do to hold up your end of the bargain. And honestly, sometimes we're not committed to the mission as we think we are because we give up so easily. You know, I tried this. Well, I tried it before. But it ain't work out for me. Yeah, and when people tell me, I say, yeah, it ain't work out for you, but that we two different people. Because I know for me that when I add my stank on, I already know what's gonna work out because that's what works for me. And I think about it too, is sometimes we live too freely on the past and stories of others when it's just like, nah, that happened to you. That's your situation. It didn't work out for you. And I'm sorry it did not work out for you. But guess what? Tell me what you did wrong so I can know what I can do right. Right? Let's talk about this because there are certain strategies. And I think too, some people say they don't take advice from people who has not doing stuff. That's the worst thing ever. I take advice from people who hasn't reached it because I can know what not to do. Like there's strategy that is assigned to winning. And until you take time to study to show yourself approved, you're going to keep going through things and you'll never make it to the end goal because guess what? You don't gave up because I'm like, well, especially other people. And I've heard it several times with business, especially as a kid. I started when I was 10. You really going to do that? I don't know if that's going to work out. I said, maybe it ain't work out for you, but it's gonna work out for me. Like I eliminate people fast who don't speak in faith. It's not because they're a bad person. It's just that we have different lingo in this phase of our life. It's like the Tower of Babel. Once confusion started, the success stops. So when you start thinking about stuff like that, you want to make sure that you're always in a place of being positive, hanging around friends who are always. I love half glass full friends because we're gonna figure out how to fill the rest of the glass. We're gonna figure out how to get to the next level by focusing on the positivity. Because guess what? We all could be negative, but it's up to you to know that, hey, you know what? It may have worked out now, but let me keep going because I know that I have an expected end, and its plans to prosper me, be in good health. So if I know those are my plans, I just gotta keep going because I'm gonna see it eventually, and it's gonna happen.
I had to write down some of what you said, but this is what I heard, and I'm just be done. When you are humble and curious, you will learn from winners and losers.
That's good. That
Hey, I was like, you said no, 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 no. Talk to me. You didn't do what? You didn't what didn't work out? Tell me your story. And you're calculating all the things that you shouldn't do, but you're not in it's not like in this place of, I know better. It's no, I want to learn as much as possible because I know myself. I'm not gonna give up. So if I know that I'm not gonna give up, why keep beating my head against a brick wall when you're telling me this brick wall ain't gonna move? So now I have to decide, how do I get around it? How do I scale up it? Like, how do I do? But I need you to talk to me and tell me what you did. That was good.
yeah.
I have a
Well,
whole new.
because even to people have said that part, oh, I can't get no advice from you. You ain't never. No, you can get advice from if God can use a donkey, he can use anybody. And when you think about success, I think too people look at failure as not success, but guess what? Failure can be success because now you know not what to do. I know that's not what I'm gonna do. So let me work
Yes.
on this. And I realized
Yes.
I feel that one, you know what? I learned that this didn't work. So let me fix it. That's why people, it's like the scientific method. People are in research facilities
Yes.
researching stuff that's what they do for work. They research
Yes.
and they hypothesize. And after they make this hypothesis, they say, okay, you know what? This didn't work because of X, Y, and Z conditions. I remember one time when I was teaching at one school, I was trying to have a little fresh little herb garden in a windowsill. But here's the thing: my classroom was actually warm, but my actual kitchen was cold. So there were certain times of the day I had to move the plant to the warm area. Then sometimes I had to move to the cold area because guess what? There were certain times I had to switch the temperature of what's going on. When you change the thermostat, when you change the condition of stuff to actually thrive, you realize it worked. Like I know for a fact, when you make a pound cake, you cannot put it into a hot oven. You have to put it into a cold oven and let it slowly rise as the temperature rise. But when I put it in a hot oven, the outside will be cooked, but the inside won't be cooked as well because I know I need it for an hour and 30 minutes to cook, which is a long time. So if I let the temperature cook up, rise with it, it will be where I need it to be. So when it comes to your goals and your dream, you have to realize in what environment will I grow best to accomplish this goal. Check the temperature. Like even too, you might be depressed because you're in a cold city. You might got to move to a hot area because you thrive better when you're not cold. It's simple things. Like even too, you might have to even let's say it's something that you're not getting rest. Maybe you gotta buy a new bed. You gotta figure out why you're not getting what you need. But what happens is when you just always deal with conditions like, oh, I gotta deal with this condition, I gotta do this. Who said you gotta deal with this? Who said you had to deal with lack? Who said you had to deal with poverty? These are things that we hear based off tradition and stories. When it's just like, well, who said that though? Who told you that? Who said this only way? And especially when kids come to my class and they only know how to make one thing one way. And I'm like, especially like when it comes to like John Rice, my students make it and they burn the pot. They say, oh, yes, how, that's the best flavor, but you burn the pot and you don't clean it. So we got to find a better way to do this because the end result may be that, but the bottom layer, the foundation of it is burnt up. And it may seem good on top, but once you start building layers, you start saying, oh, wait, no, it's not that good. It's not where it's supposed to be at. It's not helping. The reason why I'm not being successful is because my foundational principles are not there. It needs to be pivoted. It needs to be reevaluated. And there's nothing wrong with evaluating stuff. That's why even too, when you're in school, they give you practice tests. They give you examples, because guess what? When it's time for that final, I'm going to think about everything I learned in this class, because I want to make sure I pass the test. Because I guess what? The more you keep going, the more you focus, the more you study, the more you learn. You might not get it right the first time. There are a lot of things I didn't. I was with my friend the other day. The first time I competed at Johnston and Wells, it was trash. The flavor was there, but my presentation was not there. And I realized that, okay, so how can I better myself? So for years, if you look at my Instagram, you see a transition of my plating is different. The way I set it up is different. My flyers look different, because I had to grow and pivot. It's not that like I arrived to the next level, and that failure helped me to go to the next level, because I'm like, okay, now I can pivot this time and do it this way. And the more I learn, the more I grow. The more I grow, the more manifestation I've had. It's okay to not get it right the first time, but it's not okay to not try again.
So good. Oh my gosh. Okay, last thing, and I'm done. I'm done. I promise. You talked about that pot with the rice, right? At the bottom being burnt. And I was thinking about that as far as Caribbean folks, we do that quite often. And I was thinking about
Love it.
why do we do it, right? But we do it because of the conditions that our parents and our grandparents cooked in, right? So it wasn't necessarily a stove. Most of the time it was outdoors. I remember watching my grandmother or watching aunts and uncles cook outside on stone, right? And so that means the flames are much higher and they're not controllable.
That's
And
good.
so we got used to eating the rice a certain way because we could not control the environment in which we cooked it in. Then we get into a place where we're in a house and we got the stove and we can control all that. But because of the nostalgia of what we were taught, we still do it that way. So we're recreating this environment that was subpar because that's all we had to feel nostalgic instead of saying it's time for me to level up. And if you take that in a natural perspective, we're carrying things from the previous generation because it's nostalgic, but it's not going to help us go to the next level in our businesses. It's not going to help us go to the next level. There is a certain criteria of excellence that's required, and nostalgia, we can have nostalgia, we can remember those times, but we can't keep recreating subpar environments just to feel good about what we do. We have to move beyond our emotions. We have to move out of that thing, because now if I start cooking it a different way, now I can, because I remember, this is so crazy, because I remember watching a show and this Caribbean woman did that, and the other ethnicities who were a part of this group, right? They were like, I can't eat it like that. She was like, no, but that's how we do it. That's how it's supposed to be eaten. And they were like, it don't taste good to me like that. Like, I can't eat the burnt parts. Like, you're used to that, your family's used to that, but we're not family. We don't have the same ethnicity. We don't have the same taste. We don't like burnt charcoal rice. And so she had a real issue with that. And I'm like, we have to start understanding as we grow, we're exposed to different types of people. And that was just the way that it was done because we had nothing else. Now that we have more and we know more, how can we still keep that nostalgia, but level up in a different way? And we have to be able to do that in our businesses. When you first started your business, you may have just cater to people who were making, $25,000 a year, and they could afford to pay you, $50 a month. But as you grow, as you expand, you're now on a deeper level. You can no longer talk to those people. Right now, you want to talk to people who are making $100,000 a year and have the discretionary income to pay you on a whole nother level. But you got to be willing, I'm talking to myself, to let go of nostalgia of, wow, this was great when it happened, to say, now I'm a different person and I'm moving in a different way. I have to let that go because somebody else now needs to be positioned to help those people while I help these people over here.
That's good. I'm glad you brought it down to the nostalgic part, because we do things based off what is a memory to us, And that don't mean it might have been a good memory, but the process ain't right. And I think that I love that you said that part, because you start thinking about it is like you're supposed to be better than the generation before. You're supposed to grow. And if you're doing the same things, you have to realize, what can I do differently to still make it work, but to pivot from that. And I could understand why they kept burning my pots. I'm like, stop burning my pots. And I would bring it right to the next class. I said, they gotta come clean this. And they was like, oh, but it's not how you do it. You can't do that here. Because guess what? You leave a mess for somebody else to clean up, and you start working harder to actually clean up the mess you made, because you said, oh, but this is how my mom did it. So what? Your mom was wrong, and we will keep doing things out of habit, out of tradition. And you realize that God has a way better way than this part. And I love that you said that it was based off the conditions they did that stone cooking versus, even cooking with electric stove versus flame. There's so many gadgets that's come out, even the air fryer. Like, these things are gadgets to make things easier for you. But when you keep doing old principles, old ways into new things and never pivot, you're going to keep having the same results, because it worked in that season, but it's not going to work in this season. And I think too, in order to really get to the next level, you have to realize, to overcome life's challenges, you got to keep swimming, even when the current feels so strong, even if you feel like, I got to do it this way. Says who? Right? And you got to think that you're closer than you think to your promise. Just keep pushing and believe in God's plan. And I just leave you guys with the scripture, Jeremiah 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, and plans to give you hope in the future. So just know that you have a future, is a plan on your life. Know that God is willing. God is there to help you process it through. We're here as well too. So if you need help with coaching and clarity of purpose, we are here to help you guys out. Closed mouths don't get fed, but you can't take old habits that are not evaluated into a new season and think it's always going to be the case. You got to pivot. You got to edit yourself, because when you edit yourself, you'll move even to you got to move. I love using AI, because it helps perfect what I have. So you got to get to the point where you're open to correction, and things will work out well. So guys, have a wonderful week on purpose. Reach out if you need help. And guys, like and share this feed with other people, because it's time for you to win. You got to keep on swimming. You got to keep on going. But guess what? Until you change those areas, or you pivot, or you identify, these may be the steps that I've taken before, but are they the steps I need to go into the next season of my life? And that's it we have for you, fam. All right, see you guys next week. Watch the replay of this, and we out.